Today we're painting Red Riding Hood, and I'm going to take you through my process step by step. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to be illustrating Red Riding Hood, as I said before, and I'm going to take you through my new process step by step. Right now I am using the iPad Pro, the Apple Pencil, and the app called Procreate. And my first step was what you just saw, and that was me designing thumbnails for this piece. I picked out the composition that I liked the best, and then I enlarged that sketch and then added another layer and did a secondary sketch on top of that. And for my pose, I looked at some reference photos from pixabay.com. I will leave that site linked in the video description below. If you were looking for copyright-free photos for your artwork, you can check them out. They have a lot of great options. Before we get too far into this video, the dimensions on the digital pieces are a little wonky right now, and that's because I had this bookmark design in mind. So it'll only be the first few minutes of this video, and then you'll get into regular camera angles and widescreen when I actually start painting. So once I am happy with how the sketch is, I decide to then go ahead and do a value study so I can see where I'm going to have my light source coming from and how I want the light and darks to come across in this piece. And that is what you see on your screen right now. And it's a very rough value study. There's nothing really too precious about this right now, partly because I don't want to spend too much time on it. I just want to get a general idea of how I want this piece to look in the end. And once I was happy with the results, I decided to go ahead and go on to the next step, which was color comps. And this step was something that I haven't done before, and I'm really glad that I tried it out. So I copy and pasted my original sketch and then did a few color options. And once I was finished with all of these, I couldn't decide which one to go with because all three of them could have worked in the way that they were, but I liked them all, so I decided to go on Facebook and Instagram to see what you guys thought looked the best. And shockingly, the winner was number 1 and number 3. They were tied. So I picked the one that I liked the best out of those two, which was number 3. So that's what I decided to go with. The more of the blue and the more of the oranger red, just to have a nice complementary color scheme. So once I decided all of that, I printed out my sketch from Procreate, and then I taped my paper down, and then I taped this piece down on top of it as well with some graphite transfer paper underneath. And as you can see, I'm using a red ballpoint pen instead of a stylus to transfer my drawing on there. And that is so I can see where I've already transferred which lines. And that's just easy, like an easier way for me to go about it, because I always find when I'm using styluses, I tend to go over the same area and I tend to miss a few areas. So having that red ink do the transfer, seeing the red ink on top of the actual drawing, I can see which part I have already transferred and which parts I need to transfer. By the way, all of my social media links are linked in the video description below, so if you would like to take part in voting on color comps and giving your opinion on my pieces and things like that, I would love to have you join me on those. So those are linked in the video descriptions, as I said. And now I am moving on to the official painting part of this piece. I have masked off my moon because I know that is something that I would like to keep light and nice and round so I don't mess that up and I don't have to paint around it. I am using my 18 color set of the Holbein Gouache. I did a first impressions video on this. I will have a card pop up here so you can check that out and see how the paints performed yourself. But this is the actual first art piece that I've actually used the gouache on, so I was really excited to give it a go, and I was very impressed with the performance of this gouache. I was able to get it pretty translucent for my first couple layers, and it blended so smoothly. I mean, it was honestly like butter. It was so nice to work with. It did take me a few times to kind of like realize that I wasn't working with like straight watercolor and that it came out way more opaque than I thought it would. And once I got to her hood and her cape, or her cloak, or whatever you want to call it, I did have some troubles with blending it as smooth as I'd liked to, so I did kind of have to switch up my technique a little bit. But all in all, I was really happy with the results of this piece, and I was really happy with this line of gouache as well. So as you can see, with that moonstill masked off, I did my first couple layers in the back, and I was really impressed with how translucent I could get the gouache. And then I started to move on her face and getting all of the local color and the shadows where I wanted them. And I was very impressed with how easy this blended on her face. I thought I was really going to have a huge problem with it being too opaque. And considering that I had only used the gouache itself, the 18 colors, I didn't use pen, I didn't use pencil on top afterwards. I used straight gouache for the whole thing, and I was really proud of myself for doing it. I was pretty impressed with how realistic I could get it to look with, you know, I mean, like, it looks like a face, but it doesn't look like my colored pencil work normally looks. But all in all, I was very happy with it, and I just love the way that the gouache dries matte. I think it's so cool, and I'm really curious to see how this is going to scan in the computer and how it's going to print out. But then I went ahead and moved on to putting the local color onto her cloak, and I do have to build up a lot of the shadows and figure out where my lights and my darks need to go. So right now I'm just putting the local color down on everything and getting kind of a sense to where I want my shadows to be and where I want my lights to be. And this is where those color comps and the value studies really came in handy. And those are normally 2 steps that I skip. But I did end up taking a class on SVS Learn. It was Will Terry's 10 Steps to Digital Painting class. And doing the value study and the color comps was part of his process, and it was just so, I can't believe how helpful it was to actually have those 2 things before you actually go into your final piece with a better idea of what you need to do to accomplish the look that you want. So I will leave a link to svslearn.com in the video description below, because it is such a valuable tool to me right now, and I am learning a ton. I cannot tell you guys how many times that I've just been like, how do I do this or how do I do that? And then seeing an actual professional break it down for you is just so helpful. And it's definitely a great tool. And if you can afford it, I highly recommend you check that out as well. Okay, so once I got most of the local colors and some of the shadows blocked in on her and her face and her hair, I decided to go around and do the trees on the outside and put some local color on them, and I did a couple layers of that as well. And then it came out too brown, so I needed to kind of glaze some of the blue from the background in on top of that. And so that's what I did, and that's what I'm doing right now onto the cloak. I mixed some of the blue in with the red just to kind of bring the atmosphere into her cloak and into her hair and things like that. So I just pulled a whole bunch of blue into her hair. I don't know if you can see that right now. I kept forgetting to turn my camera on, so there are a little bit of clips missing from this, and that was definitely not on purpose. I was so mad at myself. I was like, oh my god, I forgot to turn it on. But I did end up pulling some blues into her hair just to kind of bring the atmosphere around her so it felt like she was in the scene and not just slapped on top of it. I also had very slightly brought some blue into the shadows of her face as well, and that really helped pull the piece together as a whole. And then just working off that color comp and that value study, I just kept layering and layering until I was very happy with the results that I got. I also forgot to mention that I am using a watercolor paper. I'm using Fabriano Artistico hot pressed extra white 140 pound watercolor paper, and I'm using up the last of what I have. Excuse me. So I will be switching to Arch's watercolor paper from now on, but I just want to be completely honest with you guys, I am using Fabriano right now, and I actually didn't have a problem with this paper, so I might actually order another one just to see if I still like it. I know they changed the formula, but I'm not 100% sure which paper I want to continue using, so I might just try a completely different paper in general. But for now, that's what I'm using in this video, is the Fabriano Artistico hot pressed extra white 140 pound watercolor paper. And after I had all my local colors and everything, my shadows and most parts where I wanted it to be, I went in and decided to go ahead and start layering some of my lighting. And for this piece, she is lit from behind, so I had to basically make kind of like a ring around her body. Not so much as a ring, but picking out the areas where the light would have hit it if she wasn't blocking it with her hood or a tree was blocking it, etc. So I picked out those areas and added the highlights in and started working on the outside of the trees because they would be hit by a little bit as well. And then I go in and work on some of the extra branches in the background just to kind of give it a little bit of extra detail in the background without taking too much away from her, but it was pretty rounded at the top and I needed to kind of break that up a little bit. So I added some extra branches and stuff in there using a little liner brush that I found. And then that's when I went in and started working on some of the strands of hair, and I gave her some strays and I touched up the ones that were kind of floating off over her hood and things like that. I then finally went in and gave her some eyelashes and touched up her lips a little bit, and I am beyond thrilled with the result of this project, and I can't wait to actually attempt to try to turn that into a bookmark. So here is the final illustration. So that is my new process. I hope you guys found this video helpful and useful. If you liked it, be sure to subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. Question of the day. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever worked with gouache before and how you liked it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.